Good morning, everyone. My name is Paul Martin. I have the privilege of moderating this panel, and I want to thank the panelists for spending time with us today. Is it too low? Okay, sorry. Our format for this morning is each speaker will have about 10 minutes to talk about the things that we would love for them to talk about, which is mostly along the links between public and low-income housing and availability of either federal or state monies for job training, efforts at creating voice, efforts at creating more opportunities, and efforts for sovereignty for extremely low-income people. I'm going to make some brief introductions. Their bios are extensive and their experiences are vast, but for the sake of time, I'd like to abbreviate those a little bit. In the middle here, we have Eric Dunn. He's an attorney with the Virginia Poverty Law Center. He works on statewide housing policy issues through legal advocacy, impact litigation, and technical assistance to legal aid programs. Janetta is at the end there. She's the Section 3 compliance manager for the City of Chicago's Housing Authority. And with her is her colleague, Claudia Weems. She's the Section 3 field office director for the Chicago Housing Authority. Right next to me here is Willie J.R. Fleming.
Yay!
Just J.R. Sorry. Don't call him Willie. I'll get mad at you. Willie's a seasoned community leader and human rights defender. His activism and organizing work began with the devastating impacts of the demolition of public housing that it had on the community. He's founded a couple of organizations, including the Chicago Anti-Eviction Campaign, and he's also served on the City of Chicago's chair for the UN Human Right to Adequate Housing, their official mission to the United States. And then also we have with us Cornelius Griggs, is a native of Chicago. We have a Chicago invasion, it looks like. Cornelius is a native of Chicago, growing up in as a public housing resident on the city in the near and far west side, both Cabrini Green and then in Austin. He's a proven leader with over a decade of valuable construction management experience, and he's the president of GMA Construction Group. And then we have Ms. Johnson as well, who I don't think needs much in the way of an introduction. Yay! So why don't we start at the far end of the table, and we have about 10 minutes for each person. And again, a lot of what this panel is focused on is better understanding opportunities, including Section 3. And we have a lot of experience with that project or with that program from Chicago. And we have a great advantage here to learn from them. For many of us who live in Charlottesville, the idea of using Section 3 is somewhat new. And so this is a great opportunity for us to learn and try to find what we can take away from the conversation. So start jumping in.
Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. I am the director of the Chicago Housing Authority Section 3 Field Office. We are a new department we established in June 2016. Section 3 program is not new. It's been around since the late 60s, although it's been ignored at a national level. The Chicago Housing Authority's Section 3 Field Office initiative is one of the top priorities of the agency. I oversee the operations of the office that provides services to Section 3 community, both applicants and businesses. The services that we provide are training and resources, business development, and then compliance. Janetta Scott is the compliance manager, and she could get into some of the initiatives that we're working on with the compliance system. In 2012, the agency created a hiring system that we're very proud to share with you all, which helps us monitor and track the hiring protocol for applicants and businesses, for vendors who do business with the CHA. Some of the initiatives that we're working on right now are, just share with you here, a business entrepreneurship program for our small businesses, a construction training program, as well as a minority, women, and disadvantaged certification program. We also are finishing up an apprenticeship readiness training program. The agency recently signed a project labor agreement, so we want to ensure that our residents are prepared for those apprenticeship opportunities. I'm going to go ahead and pass the microphone over to Janetta so she can go into the compliance piece. Thank you.
I'm gonna reiterate what Claudia said. Our Chicago Housing Authority is very dedicated to our, I'm not gonna say low-income residents, I'm gonna label them as Section 3. Section 3 is our resident that stay in a development, receive housing choice vouchers, and live at a low or medium income. They're all categorized as Section 3. So what are we gonna do to make sure that hiring and contracting is fair? So what we do when any proposal go out to develop work in the communities in Chicago, we have compliance forms that are attached. You can be non-responsive if those forms are not filled out. Basically, it's asking, who will you use as your Section 3 subcontracting? On construction, it's 10% subcontracting goal. Again, it's 30% of new hires. So what my division does is monitor compliance. So we make sure that when they hire, new hires is 30% of new hires. So when you complete those forms, you have to tell us who you currently have on staff that's gonna be working under this contract. To what is your hiring need? So basically, so what do we put in place? We put in place a Section 3 vendor and applicant system. So it's a certification system. So you're saying, I meet these guidelines as a Section 3, as a vendor, and also as an applicant. So we monitor those jobs. If they have a hiring need, we post those jobs, and we make sure that it's done in tiers. It's no cherry picking. Our system eliminates cherry picking. What is cherry picking? Okay, I'm gonna be on this job. You want your buddy or friend to work on this job, so you tell him to go and apply on the system. Basically, we do the tier preference. The first preference is whether work is being done. So if the work is being done in your development, those residents get the first preference if they're qualified for those jobs. If not, we'll go on to Tier 2. Tier 2 is other developments. Tier 3 is housing choice voucher holders. Tier 4 is youth build, which is basically a HUD program. And Tier 5 is all other Section 3 in the Chicago metropolitan area. So if you apply for a job and someone in Tier 5 gets it, my team have to make sure no one in Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3, Tier 4 qualified, and they chose the person in Tier 5. So if 500 people, we have over 18,000 applicants in our database, Section 3 applicants. So if someone hires someone in Tier 5, my job is to make sure Tiers 1 and 4 did not qualify before they hired someone in Tier 5. So we're just so dedicated. We listen to, we continuously make enhancements to the system to make it user-friendly based on feedback from the Section 3 community. So I'm gonna give it back to Claudia to see if she has anything to add.
Okay. One of the programs that we're working on right now, which is called the Job Order Contracting Program. What is unique about our Job Order Contracting Program is that it is strictly for Section 3 businesses. And this is to provide opportunities at a smaller scale for construction and maintenance projects. Anywhere starting from Tier 1 to $2,500 up to Tier 6, $250,000. Cornelius Griggs, he could touch a little bit on the program. He's familiar with that. But the type of projects that are in the Job Order Contracting Program include general construction, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, interior improvement, fire suppression, life safety, remediation, as well as landscaping. To date, we have, let's see, I want to say close to $40 million in projects since the beginning of the job order contracting program, which started simultaneously when we established the office back in June 2016. We started with 46 Section 3 businesses, and today we're a little over 100 businesses. And we do anticipate opening the job order contracting program to give an opportunity for more Section 3 businesses to be in the program. So,
Thank you. Why don't we jump over to Cornelia, since that one just came up in that part of your talk.
They ain't finished.
thank you.
Go for it, go ahead. Just go ahead and tell them.
Good morning.
Morning.
So I'm Cornelius Griggs. I'm the president and CEO of GMA Construction Group. We are a construction management, general contracting, and engineering firm located in Chicago. We are also a Section 3 business. So to piggyback off of some of the comments around Section 3 and why it's important, my mission for coming to Charlottesville this week and also going to other places like Atlanta and Houston and some of the other places we do work is to really draw attention to that Section 3 program and how it can take individuals that are either residents within housing complexes or businesses who employ residents from housing complexes or have residents that, or folks that work for them that are considered low income, live below or live at the medium or below the national average for income. So that's what our firm does. I'm a former housing resident, lived in Cabrini Green Project for about 16 years. So having that basis and understanding what it's like to live in a housing development and grow up there and go to college and move on and then come back and start a business that now employs 70% of our business employs folks who are considered Section 3 or low income. So we qualify as a Section 3 business, and we participated with the Chicago Housing Authority Section 3 program that was created, I think, 2 years ago? So about 2 years ago. We've been in the program now for about a year and a half, and it's done wonders for our business. And that's what the program is supposed to do. It's supposed to allow you the opportunity to be able to hire folks from the community and give them an opportunity that they wouldn't normally have. As I tell the mayor in our city, the only way to change our community is by putting jobs in the community. So if there's jobs in the community and people can actually work, then you lower crime, you prevent some of the other ancillary things that happen when there is an opportunity within the community. So our business in Chicago is one of few that have been able to bring in individuals who come from or work, or live in housing developments and give them an opportunity. And over time, they will no longer have to live in housing developments. And over time, our company will no longer be a Section 3 business. We'll grow out of being a Section 3 business, and that's the purpose of the program. But as we continue to grow, we mentor other businesses so that there are smaller businesses that are even smaller than us that are in the program as well that will benefit from some of the knowledge that we have, and they'll continue to kind of each one teach one and pull each other along. So if the program is effective, as it's been for us, businesses will grow, and that's what they're supposed to do. We're not supposed to be a Section 3 business for 20 years. We're supposed to be a Section 3 business and for the amount of time that we need to be to grow, and then we bring in other businesses. So the program does work, but it takes a number of things in order for it to work, and I'm sure we'll talk about those today.
Can you talk a little bit about the projects that you would actually work on? Like what types of construction
Sure.
would you do?
So our firm focuses on projects that are in affordable housing. Predominantly, most of our work is in the affordable housing space. We also do healthcare and we do education. So our firm focuses on what I like to call the 3 pillars of every community: healthcare, education, and housing. So we do a lot of large-scale housing in Chicago, and I've learned since I've been here in Charlottesville that what we consider a small project could be a large project here in Charlottesville. So I apologize. So when I use numbers, I'm not bragging by any means or stretch of the imagination. Those are just the numbers of the job, and I know they're much different here. So our firm, we perform probably about $20 to $25 million worth of work in a year's time, but that's spread across really small projects. So our projects are typically about $2 to $3 million in size-wise per project. So that means we perform anywhere between 7 to 10 projects a year. And they typically focus in the affordable housing, education, or healthcare space, and within the community. So we do Access Health Clinics, which is a healthcare network that only focuses on low-income communities within the city of Chicago. We go in and we renovate their facilities, or we build new facilities for them to provide affordable health care to low-income folks. Our affordable housing division focuses on projects like CHA, whether it's East Park Apartments. Cabrini Green is a large development that we have coming up in 2019, which will be a $200 million development. So we focus on those type of projects that kind of give back to the community from a small business perspective. And we work with other small businesses. We also have a training program that we established with the state of Illinois that allows us to be able to take smaller businesses, put them through modules and train them on how to start their business, how to fund their business, and continue to run their business from an operational perspective. So that once they get out and they get an opportunity to go work in a Section 3 program, they can sustain their business. It's one thing to start the business, but you have to continuously sustain the business. So we try to make sure that as we pick up that knowledge and we hit some of those potholes, and we have a lot of potholes in Chicago, literally and figuratively. But as we hit those potholes, we try to share those experiences with the firms that are coming up behind us, so that we can hopefully eliminate the need, and not to say need for Section 3, but as much as we can help those businesses grow so that they no longer have to be Section 3 businesses, right? That's really the ultimate goal, is to not have Section 3 and low-income housing residents forever, right? But we need the programs, because folks come through those type of facilities and same places that I've come from, and they need those opportunities. But once you provide those opportunities, they should be able to capitalize on those and grow personally and professionally.
Thank you. Why don't we round out the Chicago contingency and get move on.
Well, first of all, thanks for having us again, Joy, Farr, and everybody. So I just want to talk a little bit about how did we get here, right? You know, there's no victory without struggle, right? It was a challenge to work with our housing authority, as Joy said. It was hard for me to wear a suit. You know, I like just being me. It was a challenge to work with our housing authority because for years I was accustomed to protesting, right? I really loved protesting, right? Something about the bullhorn. I really love organizing, right? And for like 10, 12 years of organizing in public housing when I first got started, you heard the same thing over and over and over again. Folks in public housing just want to work, right? You hear a lot of people outside of public housing saying people in public housing don't want to pull themselves up by their bootstrap. It used to be one of the most aggravating terminologies I had to hear, because I always knew that Section 3, we had this thing called the Code of Federal Regulations. So as Joyce said, I had a great understanding of law, right? And how the law is supposed to be implemented. Because if you break a crime in public housing, they're quick to put you out. You break a crime, you commit a crime in public housing, you're quick to be arrested. But when it came to Section 3, I could never understand why folks have not committed to ensuring that there was training in place so that our people can work. So I'm a little older now. So in the 90s, I believe it was President Clinton under Cisneros or Kemp, one of them guys, right? Mm-hmm. We had a program called the Step Up program, right? So we're talking 1991. HUD allocated some dollars down in Chicago to ensure that people had the training so that when development started, they could work. Well, after we got the training, no jobs. No jobs. We got the training and no jobs. You know, in Chicago, it was very bad. So after a while, we said, you know what, let's study the law. Let's train our residents, not just in Chicago, across the country, around what Section 3 is, right? You hear people talk about it's been around since the 60s, but never enforced. So they used to say things like it had no teeth. So we figured that, instead of just crying about the problem, let's begin to organize around it. Luckily, it took maybe 15, 16, 17 years, and our housing authority finally woke up, right? How do we get them there? So for us, my organization didn't just do work around public housing, we did work around the foreclosure crisis. In Chicago, we had almost 60,000 vacant buildings, right? So fed up with it, you know, I jacked Habitat for Humanity swag, right? I created a program called the Hood for Humanity, right? Where we can get all these unemployed African-American contractors, right? To train young men and women who was pushed out of the school on how to rehab a house, right? We go into a vacant house, you know, show them how to do some drywall, how to lay down some floors, how to install vanities, right? Do a little landscaping. And when we were done with the house, we moved homeless women and children into it. No, I did not own the house. I knew it was extra legal, not illegal, right? Because I figured, you know, rats, roaches, possums, raccoons are living in these vacant houses rent-free. Why not put some homeless women and children in it? At the same time, we were able to train young men and women. So I bring that up to say we didn't wait on government to do it. We didn't wait on the banks to do it. We decided as the people it was our job to do it, right? Because society only operates when the people hold the private sector and the government accountable, right? Nothing about the people without the people, it's for the people. Which brings me to Charlottesville, right? You know, I'm looking around at all of this development, right? And I'm talking to these construction workers and they're not from here. That disturbs me, right? Now, I'm used to America, you know, oppressing immigrants, African Americans. But it's here when I learned that America is equal opportunity oppressors, right? Because here in Charlottesville, you know, even middle-class white folks ain't working from Charlottesville. Now, I'm shocked, right? I'm going, so you bringing all of these folks from out of town to work, and nobody's complaining? Nobody's upset? Well, I'm clear. I know the people at the bottom gonna fight always, right? We used to fighting. So in that, I see an opportunity, right? I see an opportunity for people to work together as a collective, and I give y'all a lot of credit in Charlottesville for that. You do a great job of working in a collective. That's what it took for us to get the programs we got. It takes a collective effort. Some of it's on the city level, but I'm told a lot of it is truly on the state level. So you have a lot of work to do when it comes to ensure that there's some type of what we call community control development. One of the things I learned that when you hire the people from the community, they usually reinvest the money they make back in the community, right? And if you're having a financial problem, like the housing authorities would say, government would say, there's just no money. Well, make sure when there's jobs and opportunity, you give it to the people that's from here, because then that money recirculates back in the community. And that's why we found success in Chicago with the Section 3 program, right? Because who better than the residents to hire the resident? You ain't got to sell the residents on hiring the people where they come from. Same thing here. You don't have to sell Charlottesville folks on to hire their own folks. So give opportunities to the folks in the community, and everything else will take care of itself.
Thank you, Sir Eric. Why don't we move to Eric? Number of legal issues being raised in terms of how compliance works, and my sense is that Eric will have some answers.
Well, I actually want to start off with a few numbers. In the state of Virginia, based on statistics compiled by the National Low-Income Housing Coalition, there are only enough affordable housing homes for 37 out of every 100 families who have 30% or less of the area median gross income. So that equates to about 156,000 homes that we need. You know, that we have a shortage of 156,000 homes to meet the need for affordable housing statewide. If you go up to 80% of area median gross income, the shortage is 188,000 homes. So how do we address this gap? I don't think the answer is theoretically all that complicated. We need to do three things. We need to preserve the affordable housing units that we already have. That means public housing, privately run subsidized housing, and so forth. There's currently a $50 billion backlog of capital needs nationwide for public housing projects. That's why you see in a lot of communities public housing being either torn down or merged into some kind of other program so that the local PHA can get funding to keep it open. That's why you see things like what happened in Richmond recently, where lots of families for months went without heat, had to rely on space heaters because the PHA decided that, with the limited funds they had, that they didn't want to use it to fix the heat, which is outrageous, but those are the kinds of choices that housing authorities are forced into because of this disinvestment. Of course, we need to develop new units. There are different ways of doing that, but we want to preserve the units we have so we don't fall any further behind. Then we want to build new units or bring new affordable units into the mix. And then we need to provide subsidies for families to go out and basically be able to rent market rate housing. Generally, I'm talking about providing funding for housing vouchers. But it's not just funding when you talk about subsidy programs. There's also policy changes that need to be made, because a lot of times people get these vouchers and they go and they try to rent and they face discrimination. They're not able to use the voucher where they want to, or they simply can't use it because the voucher doesn't provide enough money to pay the rent in the place they want to live. And so the voucher program winds up actually fostering residential segregation, even though that program was intended to eradicate that. So those are basically the three things that we need to do. It's not that complicated in terms of a solution, but then when we actually go to try to implement these fixes, here's what happens. This year in the General Assembly session in Virginia, our program worked on a bill that would simply make it easier for local communities to establish inclusionary zoning programs. These are programs where the local government can pass an ordinance that requires developers, when they're bringing in new development, generally market rate housing, to set aside a handful of units for lower income households. And in exchange for that, they're actually given what's called a density bonus. They're allowed to build more units than they would normally be authorized to build, so they can make more money to offset the lower profits they get from the affordable units. That bill only made it out of the Senate and died a quick death in the House of Delegates. So that's one bill. Another bill that was introduced was one that would have prohibited landlords from discriminating against people who want to rent with housing vouchers or other disfavored income sources. Sometimes we see discrimination against people with child support or veterans benefits, certain types of income that landlords don't want to take for whatever reason. Well, not only was that bill introduced, but there was also a bill introduced by the people on the other side of the issue to actually authorize landlords to discriminate against these sort of people. And after sort of counting up the votes, we realized that the other one was the only one that had a chance of passing. So those bills also did not pass. More funding for new development in the budget would have been a non-starter. So that, nobody even pursued that because you would have been laughed out of the room if you even asked for that. And this is not a Republican-Democrat issue. It's not that all the Democrats were lined up in support of expanding housing opportunities for people with vouchers and expanding inclusionary zoning programs and providing funding for affordable housing. No, very little support for this on either side. Probably because we don't have a good, strong grassroots statewide organization devoted to advocating for affordable housing in the state. And so legislators get a lot of money from developers, get a lot of money from realtors, get a lot of money from landlords, don't feel like they need to be accountable to people who rent their homes, especially lower income folks. And as bad as things sound in the state, in Virginia on these issues, we just saw the federal budget proposal from the White House. And here are some of the lowlights. The administration proposes a 48% cut to public housing. I just mentioned how there's already a $50 billion backlog of capital needs. Imagine what cutting the funding for the program by almost half would do. And it's not only just that funding would be cut, they've also proposed some fundamental policy changes to how public housing works that would really destabilize, the public housing that's been a stable home for lots of people for a long period of time. For instance, in public housing, if you're working and you lose your job and you report that you lost your job, your rent goes down. And then when you get a new job, it goes back up to keep track of, track the money that you're making. Under the proposed new policy changes, now your rent doesn't go down if you lose your job. Makes no sense. Currently, there are deductions in public housing for things like childcare. So if you need someone to take care of your kids so you can go out and work to pay your rent, you get some help with that from, with a break in your rent. The new proposals would take that away. And they would also increase the minimum rents and increase the overall rents from 30% of income to 35%. So you gotta pay more money and you have less help to try and meet those expenses. And if you have a lost job or income disruption, you don't get any help with your rent going down. So you can imagine, people that have been in public housing, as a stable home for, potentially decades, are suddenly, that much more in a tenuous housing situation. Overall, the White House proposes to cut HUD funding by 18%, and that includes a 10% reduction in housing choice vouchers, which, as I mentioned, they already don't provide enough money for
Right,
people to move
right.
into the higher income
Right,
neighborhood,
right,
higher opportunity
right.
neighborhoods where you can get better
Right.
jobs and send your kids to better schools and break cycles of poverty. And now, we really need more money for not only more vouchers, but to improve the payment standards of the vouchers we already have. Cutting the funding is gonna take that in the wrong direction. The administration tried to eliminate a program that was adopted late in the Obama administration called Small Area Fair Market Rents, which enables local PHAs to provide better funding within their community for people that use vouchers in neighborhoods with better jobs and higher opportunity to try to foster that sort of thing. Fortunately, there was a lawsuit filed and the administration's rollback of that rule was struck down. But this is the kind of assault that affordable housing is under right now. Yeah, as I mentioned, it's an 18% proposed overall cut to HUD, and on top of the vouchers and public housing, which are the big programs people are most familiar with, there's a lot of other important programs that are being zeroed out entirely. So it really, all of these programs, the whole idea of government-supported affordable housing is under assault right now, like it really hasn't been, in my career. So now it's more important than I've ever seen for people to fight these sort of changes.
Eric, do you have any knowledge about other localities' use of Section 3 or in the state of Virginia in terms of trying to build job training programs or?
I don't. I mean, I'm more of a housing guy.